Canada's final report on the public inquiry into foreign interference is here, and there is no evidence that there are any traitors in Parliament, according to the report. But that's not to say there aren't many concerning details to come out of this hefty 7-volume analysis. Right, Roger?
Manisa, while the Canadian government hasn't been breached per se, it's clear as day that foreign meddling is taking place throughout the country. The Commissioner named several foreign adversaries in her report that actively engage in operations to influence both the 2019 and 2021 general election.
The Prime Minister says there are members of the Conservative Party who are engaged in or at high risk of foreign interference.
Former Conservative MP Kenny Chiu laid out his suspicion he lost the 2021 election because of interference from China.
Pierre Poilievre is demanding Justin Trudeau release those names.
Is alleged interference by the Chinese government into Canadian elections.
9 in 10 Canadians are concerned or somewhat concerned about China's interference in Canadian society.
Trudeau said yesterday there was credible evidence of ties between India's government and an assassination carried out in Canada in June.
Today, the federal government finally released its highly anticipated report on foreign interference in Canada. And while it stopped short of implicating Canadian leaders in specific wrongdoings, its findings are damning for the country's ability to protect itself. The 7-volume report highlights a troublingly weak track record when it comes to safeguarding Canadian democracy from outside influence, something the Commissioner herself pointed out today.
The means used to communicate information to certain decision makers, including elected officials, proved imperfect. Sometimes, very much so, since certain documents never got to where they were supposed to go, and there seems to be no good reason why. But above all, I found that the government has been overall a poor communicator when it comes to foreign interference.
For years, Canada has struggled to contend with the shadow of foreign interference. From China allegedly funding election candidates in secret police stations which target its diasporic populations, to a foreign activist being murdered on Canadian soil, or the droves of misinformation that freely circulate online.
We have always been perceived as a kind of what I call a porous membrane, which allows foreign actors to see what kind of information they can get that gets them closer to American sources of information.
And despite being a member of the G7, NATO, and the Five Eyes intelligence alliance, Canada has consistently fallen short on its defense spending, including cyber intelligence, something its closest allies have become highly critical of in recent years.
They don't essentially have a military. They have a very small military. They rely on our military.
And with the Trump administration threatening tariffs and a federal election looming just around the corner, today's report is yet another existential crisis on the country's doorstep. The question is, can Canada do something to prevent foreign interference this time around?
I'm dubious, I have to say. Government moves rather slowly on these matters. They're not going to be, in my experience, suddenly going to wake up tomorrow morning and say, my gosh, what have we neglected to do? It seems a little bit like bolting the barn door after the horse is out.
The report lays out a number of recommendations the government should take, like issuing harsher penalties for violations of the Elections Act and amending it altogether. But with the next election expected to take place anytime between now and October, it might be too little, too late.